Now let's look at what we have with three sensors. I have three sensors right here next to me. I've got a limit switch, which is very similar to our bumper switch. We've got a light sensor, and then we've got an ultrasonic sensor. That's for distance. So we're going to look at all three of these, and the first one we're going to do is our limit switch. So I'm going to go into the joystick digital motor and limit. And in here, it's very similar to the one that we had before, was joystick digital to motor. You use this limit switch or even the bumper switch to detect when you've reached your max distance. So if you want to rotate up to a certain point and just say don't rotate past this amount, when this limit switch or the bumper switch is engaged. So right now you just need to pick where I've plugged it in. So I've plugged in my bumper switch, and so when I bring the switch, or I bring the lift down, I want it to engage the limit switch. The limit switch is going to be plugged into motor port 1, digital motor port 1. So I put it there, and if I don't have one for the top, I just leave that blank and it'll be fine. But with this code, whenever the lift goes down, I just need to make sure that this part right here, the limit switch, when it's engaged, it will stop me from being able to press down any further and possibly damage anything on the robot. So it'll come down, it'll engage, and it'll prevent me from going down, but it will allow me to go up. And that's how we use it here in the drive program. You would choose one or the other. So if you have a limit switch, you don't want this other one, and so you just delete that one. So you only have one controlling your lift, and that'd be the one with the limit. Now in autonomous, we need to make sure that if we're going to be using this, we need to set up a variable. I recommend making a global variable, so you can use it in and out of your other programs. And all you would do is set it up as a character, and we'll just call this the limit switch 1. And put 1 on there. That's the digital port that it's in. So I've set that up in autonomous. I can go ahead and make for fun, let's go ahead and make a if statement. Come on, there we go. If statement, if limit switch 1 equals 0. So if it equals 0, if it's pressed, then we want it to go ahead and print a screen. The limit has been met. Now, in order for this to work, we need to make sure that we get our inputs. So input limit switch, we get it from port 1, and we retrieve it to limit switch 1. We press OK. In order for us to test that consistently, we need to put this all in a big while one loop. Okay, and we're just going to go ahead and run this. Now, because it's a competition program, I've got autonomous and operator control. I build and download, you can see it says Field Control Competition Project. This is our terminal. And down here we have something different than we've seen before. We have Competition Switch Simulator. What that does is that allows me to enable the driver or autonomous side of that program. The brain has two programs. It has the operator control or the autonomous. If we select autonomous, it'll jump into that autonomous loop. And if I press it, limit met. You can see it jumping on and pressing all those and filling it in. When I press it, then when I let go. If I go back to driver, I can press it all I want and it won't make a difference. It won't allow me to do anything. So that's pretty neat that I can switch back and forth using that. And I've got my limit switch working. So you could use this for a lot of different things. People have used this to count things as they pass by. We could use it for the top or bottom range of a lift, or to detect if something has or has not entered into a space. So a lot of different uses for the limit switch. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to just kind of make a new user function. We're going to call that one limit switch test. And all I'm going to do is take that bit of code that I had right here, cut it, and paste it. Again, really happy that we used global variables. That way we don't have to worry about where it's located. But if I wanted to run that test, I could put that in there. Back to autonomous. Autonomous is blank, and we're going to look at our other input. Our other input is going to be our light sensor. So a light sensor, you see when I drag it over, it talks about analog input. I have mine plugged into analog input number 1, and we're going to retrieve to light value. Now I haven't created that variable, so I'm going to go ahead and copy this, press enter, go back to the main. The main is where everything's located. Double click on my globals. Let's go ahead and set up our variable, and it said inside that box unsigned integer is what they want it to, so we'll go ahead and hit paste that value, light value, press OK. So now I have my light value equals get analog input. We're going to do a similar thing to what we did before. We're going to have our while loop. While 1, we want this to run for a really long time. The light value, and then we want it to print that value out. So we're going to print out that value. So sensor equals. This will just allow us to test our light value. Remember, it's in the competition project, so we need to switch to autonomous. Now we're going to be getting a value. I put my hand over it and it gets darker. Just like we did. I'm going to take this, we're going to cut it, and we're going to make a new user function. And we're just going to print this, paste that back in there. So now we have that. Now the last thing we're going to do is our ultrasonic sensor. Ultrasonic sensor has 2 cables coming out of it, an input and an output. Both of these are going to be put into the digital ports. I've plugged my yellow one. You can see that they both have a black and red, but one of them is yellow and one of them is orange. The input, which is the yellow one, I plugged into 8 just for this example, but you need to plug it in through 1 through 8. And then the other one I've plugged in into 12. The output, which is orange, O and O, is plugged into 12. That allows me to get information from. So I send out information and I get information from. This is an input and an output device according to the brain. If you go to controller configuration, if you go to project controller configuration, you'll be able to see that 9, 10, 11, and 12, you can see how these are pointing outward. Those are outputs. You just click on them and it switches the direction. We want to make sure that 9, 10, 11, and 12 are outputs because we're going to reference those, we're going to use those as outputs. So right now I plugged in 8 as an input and then 12 as an output for our ultrasonic sensor. Now our ultrasonic sensor, we're going to do a similar program to what we did with the other ones just to test it, just to kind of get a value. We're going to do a while 1 loop. We will print to screen and we will take our ultrasonic. We're going to get the information from there. So we need to start it first. We're going to start it. It's going to go on port 8 is the input. Output is the 12. So we've got our interrupt and we've got our output, port 8 and 12. That's starting it. Let's put that start just above our loop. We'll need to start that 1 time. We'll bring that back in. And now we're going to get, and you can see we have get inches or get centimeters. We're going to get, this is going to be the same 8 and 12, and then ultra value. just like I'm going to go ahead and copy this. And it says returns unsigned integer, which means we need to make an unsigned integer in our main as our global variable. Double click, unsigned integer. I paste exactly what I wrote down earlier so I don't have any mistakes. Press OK, back to the autonomous, and then I print to screen. I'm just going to print out that value. Ultra value, we're good there, and we'll press OK. So now it should give us back an information in inches of how far we have something away from this. It goes, if my memory serves me correct, 10 feet all the way up to 1.5 inches. So we should get some good, interesting numbers here. And let's go ahead and build and download.